gaudy that way.
Are you ready? I'll go over here, Tim. So we're roughly here too?
Yep, on either side of the table. Perfect. Then you're socially distanced and you're still.
Okay. Are we streaming? All right, welcome everybody. I'm Wayne Kazmierczak. Maybe you don't recognize me, but I'm the superintendent here at White Bear Lake Schools, and we're happy to have you here tonight to talk about the new elementary. I'm going to turn it over relatively quickly to Mr. Tim Wald and Dr. Allison Gillespie to begin the presentation, but I want to read one thing first, just so you're aware of our protocol for tonight. So in this new normal that we are living in, it is important that we mention the following. Sorry, I got to be here. Hi, everybody online who might be watching. So as you know, we collected contact information for all of our in-person attendees this evening in order to facilitate contact tracing should it need to be done. If you test positive for COVID-19 in the coming days, please contact Jody Reber, and Jody was at the desk when you came in. And I'll read her phone number, but you can just look up my office and you'll find Jody. But her number is 651-407-7563, so that we can inform other attendees to be watchful for symptoms as appropriate in working with the Minnesota Department of Health. So with that, again, I'll say welcome. It's nice to see people in person. It's been a long time since we've had a community meeting. I know we ran the referendum campaign last fall, summer and fall, and we had over 125 different meetings where we were meeting with people about that. And we've made a lot of progress in the design work, and tonight you'll be the first to see the work of the design team on the new elementary school. And we have a couple of key questions for you to ponder, and so that's the purpose of tonight's meeting. So with that, Tim and Allison, I will get out of your way.
All right, thank you, Dr. Kazmierczak. Again, Tim Wald, I'm Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Operations. One area I've been working on a lot over the last year is the referendum, and now the preparation of delivering on the improvements that our voters passed in November. So I'm going to give a very brief overview of our projects, and then we'll get into the design process, and then we're going to be excited to show you kind of how things are going to look in Hugo and what the next steps are. So Dr. G will start with that in just a minute, but first our strategic plan really guided this work. Recall that 2 years ago we underwent a very in-depth strategic planning process, and we had, I believe it was around 800 people in the community who participated in that process, and out of it came some really bold steps for the future. The referendum is part of delivering on that strategic plan. In the strategic plan, we said that we would ensure facilities meet our enrollment growth, and we know that there's expected enrollment growth in Hugo, more Hugo than the rest of the community, but there'll be enrollment growth throughout our communities. And we'll improve our current sites to facilitate the needs of the strategic plan, one of those being flexible learning spaces, as the way that we deliver education in our schools is changing, and really changing right now. Having flexibility in how those learning spaces are designed is really critical. So that's the strategic plan and how that guided our work. But we're looking at district-wide additions and renovations to meet our projected enrollment growth, safety and security improvements, deferred maintenance. And so those are projects that have been on the back burner because we didn't have funds for maintenance or improvements to buildings. We're going to be able to handle some of those things now. And then updates to create the flexible learning spaces that I just mentioned from our strategic plan. A number of things are going to happen or are in place already. District-wide additions and renovations. That's regarding the enrollment growth. Safety and security improvements and deferred maintenance. I mentioned those already. A new K-5 elementary school being built here in Hugo. We'll talk about that tonight. Hugo Elementary, there'll be an addition to Onika, but Hugo Elementary will become a northern early childhood location. The current North Campus will become a single 912 high school. And that's something that was a need in our community for quite some time to unify our high school, and this plan will accomplish that. Sunrise Park will move into the South Campus location. Current Sunrise Park becomes this really interesting multi-generational program for seniors, our Senior Citizen Center, early childhood programs, Transition Education Center, and the district office. And then Central Middle School will need space as well, and so they'll be taking over the district center building, which we think is pretty awesome that building, built in the early 1900s, is going to house kids again. And then throughout the entire district, we'll be developing creative, flexible learning spaces. So the process to put all this together is quite lengthy and quite involved. Dr. Allison Gillespie is our Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, and she'll talk about that process.
Good evening, everyone. I'm excited to be here. I'm in a new role starting July 1st, but I have been a principal in our district for the past few years at North Campus, and then last year had the privilege of really getting involved in leading much of the collaborative work that we did to ensure that these design processes and what we decided around the design of our building was decided in terms of what type of learning we wanted to create for our students. And so what we did was created, can we advance to the next slide? Thank you. We created a future of learning committee that really talked about, and it was encompassed members from our community, our staff, students, parents, and really talked about what do we want based on our strategic plan for learning to look like for our students in the future. What are our community values? What does research talk about? So that the type of learning that we were trying to create for our students drove the decisions around design, and it wasn't vice versa in terms of making huge decisions for the future of our district. And we're really proud of the work that we did. And out of that committee came really some guiding parameters around design principles, and then also guiding parameters around programming and learning and what that will look like for us in the future. And that both of those parameters are helping us, one, as we implement these new designs and what you're going to see tonight with the new elementary school, but also as we think about the opportunity that we're in right now as we move forward and try to create learning that is meaningful for our students in a really difficult time. And so those parameters that came out of that work is really important. And so the next step from those parameters for the design process that you're seeing is each school had what was called a core group. And so the core group had representatives from within this, for the new elementary in particular, how do we represent the stakeholders that would be a part of this elementary that represent across our district, that will create parameters and set what I think our design, you guys have to tell me, would be schematic design in terms of the big concepts of the building. And then from there, it went to smaller groups that our Tim and other groups will talk about. But essentially the message is, what we really care and what I hope that you take away is that this is a really collaborative process that we're really proud of, and something that learning drove the design of this building, and it wasn't, like I said before, vice versa, which can sometimes be a fear when you have such a important project, but something that happens when it's so big within a district.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gillespie. So helping to guide the process it's a very complicated process, like I mentioned, and we identified really probably the premier firm in Minnesota working with K-12 education through design of school sites. And that's Wold Architects and Engineers, and they've been with us, gosh, for almost a year and a half now, leading this process. And so I'll introduce Sal Bagley and Paul Aplikowski from Wold Architects and Engineers, and they'll lead us through the rest of the presentation.
Evening, everybody. I'm Sal.
And I'm Paul Aplikowski.
Steve, if you don't mind, maybe on the next slide. So like Allison mentioned, there was, sorry, I have to project so loud. Like Allison mentioned, there was a core planning group for the new elementary school. I think it was about 25 people. They met from early February through about April to set the overall floor plan of the building, which we are excited to show you tonight. And then after that, we've been working in a process that we call user groups. So we go meet with representative teachers for all the types of spaces the building will have. So for example, in a language classroom, a Spanish or Chinese, and What do we need for display in a room like that? What do we need for cabinets in a room like that? What should the flooring be made out of? And we even get down to the level of detail of where the light switch should be, how high the ceiling should be, et cetera. So we are involving a lot of teachers in the design, and we're about 2/3 of the way, I would say, through that process. We were able to meet with all types of teachers twice before the end of the school year. We have a couple groups to meet back together with in the fall again. But that's really to build ownership and to continue involving people so that when people move in, there's no surprises. So that process that started really with the referendum planning is being executed in every project.
And in this case, there is no staff for the building yet. So the district selected semi-randomly from people across the district in the different interest areas. So art teachers, music teachers, general classroom teachers.
Yeah. Next slide. So overall referendum projects timeline, maybe to give a little bit of context. So that Future of Learning Committee that Allison mentioned, they met in December and January. And then the new elementary school started design back in late January, I think it was the last day of January. And it will be in design through November. So the project will go out to bid at the end of November. And bidding will be occurring over the fall or over the winter. And construction is anticipated to start this spring, so spring of 2021, for a fall 2022 occupancy. I won't go through all the details for these, but the high school is obviously a pretty big project, so that's already in design. That will go out for bid next spring, and construction will start in the summer. And that will open in phases over the course of the next 4 years. And then there is work at all of the buildings, as Tim Wald mentioned. So the first 4 elementary schools to get their programmatic improvements are Lincoln, Matoska, Vadnais Heights, and Willow Lane. And they are in design through September. So we're kind of nearing the end of the design phase for those, with the intent of starting construction this fall yet for most of them. And then last but not least, the new transportation building, a bus storage and maintenance facility, is actually just wrapping up design right now and getting ready to go out for bid. Thank you. This is just a graphic representation of that to try to explain how the projects are phased. So the blue boxes are months that represent design, the yellow are bidding months, and then orange is construction. So the high school is at the top, so you can see the long construction duration for that. And then the first 4, we're calling them the phase 1 elementary schools, Lincoln, Matoska, Vadnais, and Willow, are the 4 bottom bars that start soon. And then the new elementary school takes a little bit over a year to build, about 16 months. So that's kind of set our construction and design schedule so that we can meet a fall 22 opening. Next, thank you.
And then the scope of the new elementary school, it is based largely on the size of this building. So it will be roughly the size of this, but we're starting with a clean sheet of paper design. It includes all new furniture for the building and all the equipment that goes with it. That was all included as part of the referendum funding. It is about 101,000 square feet, which again is very similar in size to this building. One exception is that this building had the gym supplemented by city funding. So this has a double-sized gym. The new building will have a single-sized gym. The total project cost is about $43 million, and that includes all of those things that I just mentioned. And we talked about the involvement of the groups in it. So we've really been working with them on a collaborative design. Most of that wrapped up in the spring. We were able to do all that. COVID happened right in the middle of it, so we very quickly switched to having online meetings, and that's gone really well. And all these user groups that we talked about having, those have all been through online meetings, which has been really helpful to keep things moving. I wanted to talk a little bit about the concept that we're working to kind of enrich the design of the building, and then Sal will talk about the floor plan and the functions that we've been working on. In any project, we like to look for some inspiration from the community that it comes from. Schools are obviously a part of their community. And we've looked at some of the really great things going on in Hugo. The upper right picture is actually Onika Lake. I think Onika Lake was having a good hair day that day, but it's a beautiful picture. Things like the lower right there, that boardwalk or that connection to nature. And then the upper left one, we're really looking at an idea of how do we connect the students in the building with the site that they're on. As you'll see, the site has a lot of natural area to it that we're hoping to connect into the school building. Go ahead. And we have been looking at, again, the city of Hugo and kind of your place in the world and how you identify yourself. We've looked at the idea that you are a blending of civic, natural, home, obviously, and rural life, and that is identified in your city charter. We'll show that in a second. This aerial photograph shows kind of that relationship, that you are at this unique position where you're at the junction of what becomes rural, but you're not so far from the cities. I think that's one of the great virtues of your area. Go ahead. And we took this from the city website. Hugo blends the comfort and energy of urban life with nature, outdoors, recreation, and small town community. This makes Hugo a sought after destination for families, professionals, and outdoor enthusiasts to call home. So we're trying to embrace some of those things in the design of the building. And so we're keying again off of 4 key areas: civic, nature, home, and rural as part of the building. And you can see kind of a preview of the floor plan. What we're doing is taking the more public spaces like the gym, and we're kind of branding them as a civic space. The things that are labeled home are actually the classroom area. We'll show you those in a second. And then the heart of the building, which is, we call it the Learning Commons, but you might think of it as the library or the media center as part of the natural. And again, our intent is to connect that with the site and blend it with nature a little bit. Okay, go ahead. And we'll let Sal explain the floor plan.
Sure, so it's probably a little difficult for you guys to see the labels. Maybe those watching at home can zoom in a little bit more, but the floor plan is color-coded to try to help with some of that. So one thing I want to emphasize is this is showing the building in an orientation. So the top of the building has the gym here. We're actually here to talk about the site plan mostly tonight, and so we actually have 2 concepts, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but just so when you see it on the site later, it's actually rotated in 2 different positions for those options. But in this configuration, the main entry is shown on the right-hand side of the plan, or Plan East, and that's directly connected to the main office, which is a kind of a goldenrod color for security, so people are checked in and screened before let into the building. And then you quickly come upon the center of the building that Paul already mentioned, which is that deeper blue color. That's the Learning Commons. So the core planning group really had to think about what tone they wanted to set for the building and the important relationships. And they wanted the Learning Commons of the Media Center to really be kind of the heart and the center of the school, and so that drove a lot of the floor plan. And they wanted the learning environments, the learning communities or academic environments, to really encircle it. So those are the 3 green and orange and blue shapes. There's 3 of them that are kind of rotated and encircling the Learning Commons. So there are 6 of those. There are 3 downstairs and 3 upstairs. And the building is designed really to support either a configuration by grade, so a K, a first grade, a second grade, or some sort of future other collection of students, whether that be multi-age or 2 grades together. The core planning group wanted to have a mind towards the future and what might happen. So then to the north of that, the light blue is the cafeteria. That's another one of those public spaces. And the gray space just to the top of that or to the north of that is the building support. So there's the kitchen in there, the boiler room, the receiving area. You can see there's an arrow with a label for the loading dock. And then last but not least, we have our specialist classrooms or specialist spaces. So the very dark blue at the top is the gymnasium. That's a full-size competition gym. Here at Onika, Paul mentioned it's actually a double gym, so that's the main difference between the buildings. And then just to the south of that, or just below that, are 2 green boxes, and those are 2 music classrooms. So the building is oriented to be able to keep spaces that the public regularly uses open, while being able to close off academic areas, and also keep louder activities away from quieter activities that you might want in the academic wing. Next, I'll show you the second floor. So there are 2 stories to this building for some of it. Things like the gym and the cafeteria and much of the media center are, I'm going to call them 1 stories plus, so they're more than 1 story. But the classroom areas are directly stacked on top of each other, both for circulation efficiency as well as to preserve as much green space on site as possible. So the other 3 learning communities are located upstairs, again surrounding that 2-story Learning Commons, as well as the 2 language classrooms. So you can see those, they're kind of at the intersection of Studio 4 and 5. They're the green boxes there. So those represent the other specialist classrooms. We'll see a more zoomed in, oh, thank you. So this is a zoom in of one of those learning studios, was the phrase we came up with the core planning group. So this really represents kind of a collection of types of spaces to support the type of learning and teaching the district wants to do in the future. And so you can see we've placed number labels here. There are classrooms labeled 1 through 5, But instead of all of them being designed the exact same, they're actually designed to support different purposes and uses and have some specialization of their own. And so you can get a wider variety of space. So instead of having everything be the same, they were able to kind of differentiate and get a broader spectrum of types of space. So I'll just kind of quickly go through it. So could be any one of the 6. You can see on the bottom, it says to the rest of the building. You can imagine that connects on, but we've got those first 2 classrooms that have an operable wall between them that are intended to support team teaching. And then classroom number 3 has some glass out to that flexible space. Classroom number 4 actually is really only bounded by about 3 walls and to support different types of activities. And then classroom number 5 is designed more for like makerspace activities or maybe messy activities, so has some more sinks and a hard surface floor. And really those classrooms all encircle that flexible space, or some people are familiar with like a pod or a house design of an elementary school, really embracing that concept. And then there's some other key resources, I'll call them. So there are 2 small group or conference rooms. Those are in the blue. That's kind of that very deep blue in the center there. So if you do need an acoustically private space to do your work, that those are provided. There's a staff office shown at kind of the top left, so that staff has somewhere to keep their personal belongings, obviously as they are sharing these spaces together. Then in orange, you can see there's an integration or inclusion of special education into every learning studio. So there's some presence of those needed supports for students in all 6 pods. And then last but not least, there is a mudroom. So that is a place where student coats and backpacks and boots can stay to try to, students would actually come in the building and either go right in or go right upstairs and leave their things in the mudroom kind of before they enter the learning environment. That's something they saw on tours that they really liked, to keep some of that clutter out of the classroom. And then there are bathrooms. So that's kind of the kit of parts of a given learning studio. So we spent a lot of time with them kind of designing this ideal environment. So there'll be 6 relatively identical of these in the building.
So the belief behind that, it's not dissimilar from pods or clusters, which is what Onika has. The reason we're calling it a learning studio is the intent is that it really is 5 to 6 or 7 staff that have that as their home within the building, and they share the resources within there. So for instance, it may be a 1st grade learning studio, and those teachers would all team together to use that space and direct instruction in a more personalized way for the students in that space, and to give, again, more flexibility for education and learning and for teachers.
So we have some very early 3D views. Not many people have seen these, so I hope you guys are excited. So we are about midway through the design process right now. Obviously, we're finishing up by November. So on the left-hand side would be, behind that wall would be the mudroom and the special education area. And then on the right-hand side, you can see a couple of the classrooms. And then kind of down the middle here, we're seeing the flexible space. And towards the back of the view would be that staff office. So showing how really from anywhere in the learning studio, there's ease of supervision, so teachers can feel comfortable sending small groups of students or individuals out to work in the flexible area, and how really the role of furniture can play a big key part in this. So seeing a variety of flexible furniture here that has not actually been picked yet. So this is an early concept view of the learning studio itself. And then the learning commons, that's another kind of key driver of this whole building. So that's what many people, like Paul said, would consider the library or the media center. I'm getting too close. So this is really the heart of the school. It is directly connected to the outside. You can see at the top of the slide that it says outdoor learning. There will be actually both a visible through glass as well as a physical connection to outdoor learning space there. And it is encircled by all of the classrooms. So this is intended to be a really flexible space, and I think the core group sees the media center as a space that has changed very significantly over time. So they wanted as much flexibility as possible. So even if the bookshelves can move, that would meet their goals. So there's a performance area. You can see that at the top of the image with the label. So that's kind of a small stage or performance area for...
Kind of like
oh,
this.
like this. Oh, I thought you were telling me to move. Just like this, yes. And then there's a collection of flexible furniture there, so you can see some small group tables and booths and soft seating to support group activities and reading. There's a small group and conference rooms again, so to support acoustically private activities, and a centrally located media workroom that's attached to the media desk. so that, again, the adults can supervise everything that's happening. And we're closely working with users of this space to try to determine best how to arrange some of the spaces. So this is a little bit in progress, but represents most of the core planning group's goals. And I think we have one more image. Yeah, so this is an early view of what that learning commons might look like. We've kind of just come through the main entry and taken a little bit of a left. So the main office would be to the left-hand side, kind of just barely out of view. You can see the staircase going to the second floor there. The glass on the right-hand side would be that connection to the outside with that outdoor classroom right outside of it. And then in the foreground and continuing to the background of this image, you can see that flexible furniture, the book stacks towards the back there. We've got the small conference rooms, and then that performance platform would be on the very right-hand side of this space. And again, like Paul mentioned, this is in what we're considering the natural part of the floor plan, so lots more organic shapes, whether that be in the floor patterns and the ceiling, and maybe even in the finishes. Tim, are you on?
Yes. You folks live in Hugo, so you know that finding a site to build a school in Hugo is a difficult undertaking. There's not a lot of undeveloped land remaining, and so much of it is wet. You probably experienced that if you built your homes in Hugo, that there's a lot of water near the surface in Hugo. So finding the right place to build a school was a challenge. We spent a lot of time finding just the right space. This is the space that we purchased from the Pelican family, the Pelican Farm on Highway 61. You can access the site from Highway 61 on 152nd and 159th. The southern border is the post office, so you can also access the site. Well, there's not access right now, but that would be a potential site access point. Okay. Yeah, so this is the site. Moving on to here, you can see it's located fairly close to our current elementary schools in Hugo. Onika is just a little bit northwest of here. If we were going to build 2 elementary schools in Hugo, we might separate them a little more than this if that were not an option. But when Hugo or Onika Elementary was built here, it was built kind of in the center, east-west, just west of center, and this will be located mostly in the center, going from east to west. You can see Onika Elementary on the top, and you can see Hugo Elementary on the bottom. Currently, Hugo Elementary houses our K-1 students, Onika grades 2 through 5. When this new school is built, both Onika and the new elementary school will be K-5 schools. And a reminder that Hugo Elementary becomes an early childhood site serving the northern part of our school district. The land that we've purchased is about 130 acres. However, 95 acres of it is wetland, so that leaves about 35 buildable acres in the area to build an elementary school, which is pretty good sized land. Right now you can access the site. Really, there are multiple ways you could do it. I mentioned the post office from the bottom. That would involve building a road alongside the railroad to get up to the buildable area. You could access the site at 152nd from Highway 61, or you could come in on 159th and down Fox Hill, create an access there. There's also a connection at 157th Way. That'd be another way to access the site. There are multiple government organizations that have interest in how we access this. This Highway 61 is owned by the state of Minnesota, so MnDOT will have some input on this. City of Hugo has an interest in how we access this site. And Washington County, at some point, is expected to take control of Highway 61, and so they may have some interest for the long term as well.
So I think if we go back one slide, this is what we asked you to come here for, is to give us some input. So you can see we have multiple ways that we could access the site. And we've been working through basically the northern half of that. So the connection by the post office we looked at early on, but because there's so much wetland between there and the building, we have to do a lot of remediation to do that, so we're not favoring that option. But we do have two options. One of them is to go out to 61 on 152nd. In order to do that, you may not know, but when these kind of projects are done, the city and the government units look at the school district like a developer. And like any developer, they expect them to make the improvements to the city that need to happen to support that project. What they've told us is that if we go out on 152nd, we need to construct a roundabout on 61, which is quite an expensive proposition that we would have to fit within the budget of the project. Our other alternative that we're considering, and we're looking for your input on, is coming from the north side, so down Fox Hill Lane and potentially 157th. We anticipate that the city and the county and the state will still ask us to do improvements on 61, but those would then be targeted at 159th, which would provide some other benefits for the neighborhoods there to help that intersection get some more control. So we do have two different site plans that we just wanted to show you, and then we're going to open it up for questions in person. And then again, at the bottom of the screen, if you're watching online, there's a way that you can submit questions there, and the district will read those off and we'll work through those.
Yeah, so thank you. I'll just quickly review both concepts. The philosophy for both are really the same. So we're trying to separate parent and bus traffic as kind of a key tenet of good site management, and that's both for safety as well as sanity, let's call it. So we work to separate those by really having the buses and drop off students at a different side of the building than the main entrance. Another key tenet we find is that the parents really want to get their kids to the front door. So we want to have the parent drop-off loop get as close to the front door as possible. So you'll see that in both site plans. So with that being said, this actually shows the building in the configuration you saw before. So the gym would be kind of that top box there, and the classrooms are kind of the pinwheel shape towards the bottom. So this would be coming off of 152nd there. So there'd be kind of a bit of a frontage road built on site, and then buses would peel off of that and go into what we call a bus loop. So that's that parking lot on the south there. So how that is designed is that buses can angle park with their door along the sidewalk, and students can step right out of the bus, right onto a safe space on a sidewalk, and then when it's time to leave, the first bus can actually just pull away. They don't have to back up, and the buses can leave in quick succession. So it's really important that school buses never have to back up because that is a safety concern. So that is also intended for use for hard surface play. So at lunchtime, you can put a gate across that so cars don't accidentally enter that area, and it serves as additional space for foursquare, hopscotch, or basketball hoops, and all that good stuff. And the intent is to have the play structures. Those are a little hard to see here, the kind of the yellow blobs on here, we're calling that soft play. So the intent is that you could have access to hard surface play structures, and then green space just south of that. And teachers could supervise students kind of no matter what their preferred recess activity was. So if you didn't take the bus turn, you'd keep going north and enter into either the parking lot or the parent drop-off loop. Another thing we're working to do in either site plan is to create as much on-site queuing space as possible. I think everybody's probably experienced what it looks like when there's not as much queuing space at an elementary school, especially in the afternoon. Traffic can build up. So you can see we're really working to create along what we call a tail. So if we can imagine the first cars kind of stopping at the front door, we want to have as much on-site stacking space as possible. So the parent drop-off loop fully encircles that parking lot and gets parents to drop their students off at the front door, and then they can enter back and exit back out towards 152nd. So this site plan has really one access point while still separating traffic. And then on the north side of the site, you can see there's a suggestion of some stormwater management. So whenever we add hard surface to a site, we have to treat water as if it, as before the site was developed. So we have to slow stormwater from hitting your streets and roads. So that'll be a detention pond. And then there's some suggestion of green fields on the kind of the upper left or the northwest there. And then what's kind of shaded in blue, that's really the edge of that, both that wetland, but it's also a floodplain. So it's not possible to build in per FEMA. But there's a bit of a trail along that. So that's kind of the key tenets to this site plan. So now I'll go to the other one. So this takes the building and rotates it clockwise about 90 degrees. So the main entrance, well, it actually rotates it and flips it, right, mirrors it. So the main entrance would face north here with the loading dock on the south. You can kind of see the arrow there. So this shows separation of buses and parents in a different way. And actually they don't mix on site at all. So this shows the parent drop-off loop, kind of again, same philosophy, different execution, coming off of Fox Hill there and then coming down and then again, fully encircling the parking lot, getting students to the front door, and then they're allowed to leave again. Whereas buses, the bus loop is shown on the northwest side here. And that is suggested to be off of 157th, although this is kind of an early concept. So that would put the hard surface play, the soft play, so the play structures and the fields on the kind of the northwest side of the building, and then more athletic fields or practice fields on the south. So they actually have a pretty similar amount of road that needs to be built in either one. Obviously they have different implications to the surrounding communities and how well it is connected or not to the surrounding neighborhood, which obviously is kind of pros and cons. And we're here to hear from people, any questions or feedback.
And I just want to emphasize again, neither one of these plans are set in stone. We're truly here to get input tonight, and we can redraw either one of those plans to include other concerns or other features. So
I think with that, we'd love to hear, wonder if maybe, is there a whole bunch of built up online? Zero, okay. Not all at once, but in person, you guys are up.
I'm Jake. I own some property on Fox Hill, which is north of the school. And I know I've talked with my neighbors about it. We have concerns with 159 primary entrance. It's already a busy intersection. And it's been, you know, in the mornings, about 6 o'clock, the traffic comes south on 61 and gets kind of heavy, and it's hard to get out of 59. We're starting to actually have bus traffic in there. Mornings, like you said, right after the intersection. We're just concerned about the increased traffic.
yeah, I will add some more parameters to that. The district has not done new boundaries yet, so it's not entirely determined exactly how much buses and the routes of them. We are anticipating about 10 full-size buses and 3 smaller buses, so it's only about 12 to 13 buses total that would do that, and that's obviously twice a day. And then traffic, we are planning for the same number of parking spots that are on Eco, which is just over 100, is that right, Tyler? Just over 100 parking spots.
Yeah.
And one of the quirks of elementary schools is that they are pretty dead calm for traffic most of the day, but it's pretty big chaos 2 times a day. And so that's really the factor. It's those rush times that everyone, I think, focuses on. There is also a traffic study that is ongoing right now. The results of that will be available in about the next month here, and we're working with the city on how to structure that. So those are all factors. I guess one of the advantages of this plan of going on 159th, I don't believe that either the state, Washington County, or the city are planning to improve 159th. This would be a means to push that project forward and get some control there. So it would add traffic, but it would also might help during other times when there's other things going on.
So I'm thinking that, I'm thinking that the other plan where, I don't understand why it has to go through the development, why can't you use 61? To have that in your entrance, that you have all that space that you bought for the school and just such a small portion is for building. I don't understand, but I think you should have it come from 61. If you're gonna have a school on a highway, have it come from 61. Why go through the neighborhood at all? I mean, there's 1,000 kids that go to school right now, and we have a population of a little over 3,000 or maybe 4,000. We don't need that all in our neighborhood. If they can just come in on 61 for buses or the people, and I don't understand why it has to go through the neighborhood at all.
Sure, and I'm supposed to repeat the question, so I'll try to paraphrase some of that. I think the statement was that if it's going to be on the highway, on the driveway, should go to the highway, don't send them through the neighborhood or the development you refer to it as. And then I think you indicated there's 1,000 students that go to school, and that wouldn't all be at this building. Between the two, yeah, it's actually more than 1,000 between the two, actually. When they're both at capacity, it would be slightly more than 1,000. So The answer to that is it does not have to go through the neighborhood. We're truly here to talk about whether that's a good idea. And again, it's a matter of choice, whether or not we put another roundabout on 61 and 152nd, or not another, but build one there, or if it ended up at 159th. So again, we're here for your input. I appreciate that.
Yeah, when I get I'm sorry, where is the school entrance when you go in there? So is that a street?
So right here would be 152nd. Actually, can I gesture on the computer? With like the cursor?
If we back up about 4 slides, we can also see a little bit bigger view, 4 or
Yeah.
5. There you go. There you
So
go.
that would be 152nd. So that would be an access point off. That would be one of the proposals. So that would come directly off Highway 61.
That's the street entrance, and then where's the school entrance?
Sorry.
Are you driving in the bus driving area? I'm just curious where that was in that picture.
Yeah, can you go back there, Steve?
What area is facing the neighborhood?
So the main entrance, so the building is kind of shaped like an upside down lowercase t. So it's at the in the upper right-hand quadrant. So it's kind of at the intersection there. So the 3 classrooms are those bottom 3 parts that stick out, and the main entrance would face northeast in this.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yep.
At the top of the gray area.
That would be the loading dock. So come around a little bit, and it's kind of at the nook between the first part that sticks out to the east. Yeah, kind of facing, to the northeast, kind of facing 61, yep. Does that answer your question? Sorry, our labels are a little small.
Yeah, it's a little hard to read. So what's the lighting? I live up in the neighborhood where the White Houses are. Corner there.
Sure.
So I'm just curious, like, what's the view gonna be for us from there with this view? What's that light green?
Those are a suggestion of just green play fields. Yeah, so that's a softball field that's kind of overlaid on top of a soccer field. Sorry, I keep forgetting to repeat the question. Yep. So we're still working through the stormwater management. So what we have to do is figure out how much hard surface we're adding to the site. So it's obviously green now. So parking lot and building roof area both count as hard surface. So we have to figure out, like in a rain event, how much water would hit those hard surfaces and have space for it to be stored on site to leave the site slowly to match what would happen in a natural event. Otherwise, we've all seen what happens when it hits a parking lot and immediately runs off. Yeah, like a pond or basically an area for water to be detained, but it wouldn't be open water all the time.
Yeah, sometimes they're dry ponds, so they only hold water after a storm event. Sure.
There was one back there.
Oh, I'm sorry. You
kind of tried to talk right when she did. Do you want to go? Okay.
So you did mention that there would be improvements at the intersection of 159 and 61. Would that be around about it also either way you get around or only?
I'm going to repeat it. So the question is, if kind of no matter whether it's 152nd or 159th, if both solutions would be a roundabout.
So we aren't through all the discussions with the city and the state yet, but they are suggesting that that's probably the right solution. And I do believe it would probably be a roundabout at either location. Yes, I believe so. It's possible that 159th actually will have a little bit more load on it and may need some other structures there, but they'll be similar.
Is there any way that the entrance could be with the lights that's in right by Subway and?
That is, yeah, that's the south end, I believe, right, that we're talking about? Yeah, we looked at that early on. We have moved away from that. We've moved away from that idea because all of that area between the triangle that we said is buildable and that area is all wetland. So when we put a road through there, we have to figure out how to replace all that wetland at a 2.5 to 1 ratio. So we're trying to avoid that just from a cost standpoint, but it is a possibility.
Trying to be intuitive for people trying to get to the site too. So what makes sense for if you're kind of when you can see the building and turn. I think I saw a hand back here.
One concern I have is just the traffic that would come through the neighborhoods there. I look at the streets out here and they're a bit wider. I believe house, these are roads built for that purpose, so concern I would have is increased traffic. I don't know why I don't want that, but also these roads don't really strike me as some that are built to handle high traffic like that. So I guess that's just feedback, but I guess in addition to that, is if we were to go through the neighborhood, would there be any structural changes to the streets as they are now?
That's a good question. We have not talked with the city about that level of detail yet. I can say that a residential road is capable of handling somewhere between 150 and 200 cars per hour, which is no more than you would find. Again, the trick to elementary schools is there'll be that money. There's 100 parking spots for staff, and then 60 to 80 typically parents might want to drop off. So you're somewhere in that range. The trick is they're not coming spaced out nicely over the day. They're coming in a 15 to 20-minute period. And it's inevitable that at an elementary school, it's congested. It's just that it's for that period of time. So it's trying to find some balance of not overbuilding for that 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the afternoon. So the road probably can take it. If we had to rip that road up and redo it, which I don't think any of you would like, that probably would be a cost problem for us, that we would look to a different solution then.
Yeah, it's less a concern about whether or not the roads can handle it. It's more a concern that there's kids playing outside constantly. It's a neighborhood road, and I think introducing this caused quite a cluster during those peak hours, because those peak hours are peak hours for families as well. Work throughout the day, so I guess my feedback just in general is, especially if it's going to require improvements to either 159 or 152nd, and they're about on par with cost and time and energy, I'd say get off the streets if at all possible.
And you must have factored in the fact when you were budgeting that we would have to get all this traffic in. So you put a school grade on 61. I mean, we did that, unfortunately, somebody must have thought of this already and have budgeted for that. Make it a little bit more. Because like he's saying, in our neighborhood, it's not conducive to having a lot of traffic. It's not the weight. It's that we have we have smaller thoroughfare. And when people are parked outside, not in their driveway, there is no left. So to have that twice a day, at least, I don't know if there's a midday kindergarten again. I don't know if that's even possible.
No, they're all day now, so
They're all
deep,
day?
yep.
Okay. Yeah, it's not conducive. So you can see how we're all just kind of in swirls and it would be dangerous.
And I would say, it's even outside of the morning and afternoon drop-off pickup times, because all schools have school activities that are happening in the evenings, on the weekends. We've got ball fields that are planned for the site, so there's probably going to be like weekend tournaments and things like that. So it's going to be an everyday traffic occurrence that we, in a 20-year-old neighborhood where it's been safe, it's been quiet, it's all going to completely change the community that we have come to know over the last 20 years. So again, starting, with the couple back here, if we can position the entrance closer to 152nd, I think that would be ideal. It would be safer. Either way, we're going to have to spend money to be able to try some, roadway changes. Seems to make much more sense, more logical sense to have the southern entrance rather than through a neighborhood.
I'm sorry, we're doing a horrible job of repeating the question. So those comments were basically about congestion in the neighborhood and changing the nature of the neighborhood by putting traffic through the neighborhood.
Do we have online comments?
We'll get to it in 1 second. We'll do an online question here.
We'll do one online question, and there are a few more. Is there a difference in access for walkers from the neighborhoods between the two scenarios?
That's an interesting point that hasn't really been talked about. One of the reasons we came for your input is you have the opportunity to put an elementary school in your neighborhood and have it be at the end of your street. We have not worked through with the city the plan to connect pathways and things. We have not budgeted to do extensive path networks on the site, but we again would take input from anybody about what kind of connections you'd like to see. I'm sorry, I'm not good at that. I think Marissa, maybe for people in here. Okay. The question was about walkways and other connections to the neighborhood.
Pedestrian connections.
Pedestrian connections, yeah.
Like what people, or when you guys here, Kyle, is that what you're talking about? Like the pathway that's back here in the nature area?
Yeah, sidewalk and path connections into the neighborhood, I think, is the gist of the question.
So they're up for suggestions on those as well?
Yep.
Do you have another?
Yeah, should we,
You want
we'll
to
go
do
back
in
to
person,
next?
we'll come back. Yeah, go ahead.
So I have a little bit of concern if you guys, the option of 159 is the way that they go. How do they plan on working it out with other bus schedules and other traffic from that? Like, we have a high schooler and a middle schooler. So they're gonna both have to take buses to school and they'll be out there during those high traffic moments. How would that be accommodated?
Sure, do one of you want to speak to school time? So the question is about the timing of buses and high school, middle school, and elementary school buses and how that's going to contribute.
Yeah, currently our middle school and high school kids will have been transported by the time elementary school traffic gets rolling. And same in the afternoon, our middle school and high school kids will be home before we have a pickup time for the elementary school.
All right, should we take some more online
Sure,
questions?
and this is a long one, I'll try to talk to it.
Okay.
I live on the corner of Fox Hill and 157th. The amount of traffic we have already on a daily basis is a nightmare. Our driveway faces 157th and trying to get in and out of our driveway is horrible as it is. You're looking to add that much more traffic than we already see. We have children everywhere. We're in a development, so our children can play outside without fear of them being run over. Sadly, on our street, we worry about our children getting run over every time they're outside. The drivers are speeding and careless. To add more traffic to these roads would be irresponsible. You can answer that, or I can go to the next one.
It's a matter of degrees. Again, we're not adding that much traffic over the course of the day, but it's fairly intense for the time that it happens. So it's subjective that way, or it's about that balance and timing. Yeah. Yeah, it's more traffic, and again, it's very intense during that certain time. Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but then also to add to that, the traffic of people knowing that there's new entrances to the school are gonna be using that too, or that other parts of the neighborhood are gonna go through that area too. So you are adding more traffic, I think, not just for the school and the students and the buses, but people knowing that there's another exit out of the development is gonna draw.
Well, it wouldn't exit out of the development, so there wouldn't be an access point to the neighborhood and to Highway 61. Because the city was quite clear they wouldn't want it to be a cut through, right? So that you enter the elementary site to try to get onto Highway 61. So it wouldn't really be an exit out of the development. You'd end up in a dead end, right? You'd end up in the parking lot. But I understand your comment. And thank you to the person who made the comment online. I don't know if there wasn't really a question buried in there, but we appreciate the feedback. I think we've got one back.
Oh.
Do you mind if we go back here quick?
Two quick questions.
Yeah.
On 52nd Street, if anybody done any survey to see if you can put a cul-de-sac there because our roundabout, the east side is already built up. So you're gonna have to shift the whole highway to the west. The other question is, the gray bar on the top of those squares, that where the pipeline runs through and the power line?
That is the Xcel Energy easement. Yep, so it's an above ground power line. Yep.
And then the question was, has anybody looked at 152nd and the possibility of putting a roundabout there, given that the east side of the road is built up? And then also just clarifying where the power lines are. So that gray band at the top, which just off the picture angles down, is that big power line that goes through there. And sounds like there's some gas lines in there too. So we're really avoiding that. We're not building or within that area. We do think we can cross it with roads, and we've made contact with Xcel Energy, and so we're working through all those things. As far as the intersection of 152nd, we have not done engineering on that. We have had, I think, 2 meetings with the state of Minnesota and the city in Washington County to talk about it. And for sure, it will take some improvement. They may have to do some changes on the east side of the road, but I believe the roundabout would all fit within the easement that exists there. But we haven't gone through full engineering, so that will have to be worked out.
Want to do another online one maybe?
A comment again, you cannot run all the school traffic down Fox Hill Avenue, the road cannot accommodate, that much traffic, sit outside on weekend, you'll see it will create an unsafe environment. So that's a comment, thank you for that.
Yes.
Question, has a safety study been done, or traffic study, sorry, has a traffic study been done? I live on Fox Hill Avenue and I'm quite worried about the extra amount of traffic coming down my street.
Yeah, so the question was, has a traffic study been done, basically, and concerns about Fox Hill and the traffic that it could take. We have not done a full traffic study. It is in process right now. Depending on, I think we're getting pretty clear feedback at this meeting. We may never study Fox Hill Lane if that's the way the district decides to go. But we are doing a formal traffic study, and the city will require it to study whatever proposal we bring to them. So we're working on that is the answer.
I'm not just concerned about Fox Hill, I don't want them to go either, so I don't know if that's what you're understanding too.
Yeah, our options are to go north or to go east. It's not, I don't think there's any blended answer there. Because we can't afford to do the improvements twice on 61, so. I think we're done here. Is there any more online?
Sure, and to continue to honor the comments, I'll read, putting the entrances, oh wait, I want to make sure. Putting the entrances off of Fox Hill and 157th in the neighborhood will put all the children in additional danger, given the amount of traffic there already is. So thank you for that comment. A question, so are you planning on sidewalks to keep kids safe and away from the buses and cars?
Yeah, so we have kind of an initial, oh, sorry, I should repeat the question. They're asking if we're planning on having sidewalks to keep students away from vehicles. We're showing kind of an initial network of sidewalks right here. So you can see anywhere there's a kind of a very thin gray line touching the building. So those are sidewalks that are going to various entrances and exits of the building. There's also be a sidewalk all along the bus loop. So as students step out of the buses, they step onto a sidewalk. And then along the drop-off loop as well, so that students step out of their parents' car or their grandparents' car onto a sidewalk. But what hasn't been studied in depth is connectivity to the surrounding neighborhood. So we're showing kind of a sidewalk that stubs off a little bit, but that will need further study.
Well, I would even say, I can't help but wonder if that question was asking more about sidewalks in the neighborhood, because we don't have, at Fox Hill, 157, 150, we don't have sidewalks, so any foot traffic, you've got kids that are walking back and forth to the bus, playing in the yard, they're either in the yard or on the street. So, has there been any consideration for adding sidewalks within the neighborhoods to stop for that 159 entrance?
So the question for those watching online is if there's been any study of adding sidewalks in the neighborhood to the north, as there are none present today.
So I would answer again that we're really just in the beginning stages of working those things out with the city. So we haven't talked about it, but we'll certainly take that as feedback and talk about it with them.
There's a path, a bike path, and a running path that's going north and south. Will that be?
Along 169?
61.
I'm sorry, along 60. No, that'll stay. Yeah, that's not on the school district property. That's a public infrastructure. And we will likely connect into that in some way. We'll have some connection to that, I'm sure.
Good more. All right.
When and how do we vote on what we want? I would rather have a roundabout built on 152nd. I live on close to 61 and 159th, and there's already enough bus traffic on 159th.
I think the answer is that there's not a formal vote on this. We're taking input, and the district is going to arrive at a decision. There's a facility committee comprised of the upper administration of the district, so we'll take it back to them. They're kind of the clearinghouse for big decisions across all of the district's projects. So I think you are voting by participating in this meeting, and I think we haven't heard many counter arguments to turning the road to the east yet. So for what that's worth, I think the message is coming through.
We are, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. We are still subject to the decision-making process at the city and the state as well. So we'll bring this feedback obviously to our next meeting with them as well. Please go ahead.
I just want to make sure that when we're doing any kind of design planning, making decisions, that we're taking safety of our families, of our children into the very first utmost priority, top consideration around, because I've heard a lot about cost. At what point do we have a break point between the safety of the families that live in the neighborhood and the cost of what the difference would be from a 159 north entrance to the 157 on the south? Because if you go through the neighborhood, all of that school traffic, regardless if it's drop off, pick off, outside of school activities, meetings on the weekends, is going to go down what we like to refer to as the way, which is the U that you see in that upper right, that's across from the pond. We don't have traffic on that road today. We haven't for 20 years that we've been there. All of the traffic being in the school is going to be going back and forth the way consistently. And there are a large number of very young children that I watch each and every day running out in the road because is it safe? No, but there's such little traffic that it's just not anything that we really have to have a significant amount of concern with. So it is very concerning that we can completely disrupt that by sending all of this traffic through that way, that little U-shaped road there. And I just want to make sure that safety of our children is going to be priority over the dollars.
You want to try to summarize that? Basically, I think it's
For online. Got it.
It's a statement that safety should be incredibly important both for on-site and off-site for children. And I think, again, conveying the idea that the roads right now are not very busy up there, and adding traffic to them is going to create them be more hazardous, basically, to the residents and children, particularly in that neighborhood. Is that a fair approximation?
Yep.
I don't think you're looking, well, I can say that safety is the #1 priority for everybody, for the district. And again, we do school sites. That's all I do my whole career. I've done school sites, so we're quite aware of that. And a lot of the things that we talked about are all based on that. The idea of separating buses and parents and pedestrians on site is all key to that. And we're putting resources towards that at every moment.
Any more?
Yes. Was there somebody back?
No.
Comment, the entrance off 152nd would make the most sense. You cannot route these buses and all the extra traffic through the neighborhood is a school through the neighborhood. It's a school, we're building, our first priority should be child safety. It would not be safe to have all these buses and traffic coming through the 2 streets in our development and putting our children in danger.
Thank you for the comment.
And then question, how do we voice an opinion that the entrance to the school should be on 152nd Avenue only and not through the residential area?
By sharing your comment. So the question is, how do they voice their opinion that they prefer, I'm going to call it this site plan versus the northern connected. So thank you for voicing your opinion.
Okay. And if you have to build a roundabout at either 152nd or 157th, why would you destroy a peaceful neighborhood with the bus and additional vehicle traffic by running them through the development? In addition, would you not have to install sidewalks in the residential area to keep the kids safe from traffic for kids walking?
So a similar comment. And I don't know if we've conveyed all the comments, but that comment about sidewalks was made in the room here too.
Did you have your hand up back there? No, okay. I saw it out of the corner of my eye. Was that all?
I have a few more.
Okay.
Keep going.
Yep.
Okay.
Keep them rolling.
As a resident of the 157th Way North and a father of children that would be attending this new school, my family and neighbors strongly urge you to consider the first proposal with the entrance off 152nd from 61. The additional traffic to Fox Hill and 157th Way on the second plan would create so much more traffic. it would be of concern for our children's safety. Many of us purchased a home in these neighborhoods to avoid the heavy traffic. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment.
And then next, I would encourage you to come spend one day on our front lawn on Fox Hill and 157th, and you'll understand why we feel so strongly against this being an option as an entrance to the school. Thank you for that. Next question, after this meeting and getting people's input, how will the final decision be made?
So the question is, how will the final decision be made after tonight? Just for those who maybe can't hear.
So again, I don't know if you want to speak to that, one of you, but I suggested we bring it back to that facility committee.
Yeah, as Paul said, some of the members of the facilities committee are here, and so we're hearing all the feedback. So we're getting the feedback that's being provided tonight, and so that discussion will occur at our steering committee, and then we'll continue to work with the city and the state and possibly the county. I think will be part of that discussion too.
Will the final decision be posted when they do that, or how will we be able to find out?
So as a part of the city planning process, we'll have to go to the city planning commission and city council. So there will be that'll have a public hearing element to it. So we'll have to submit a proposal to the city, and then the city staff will make a recommendation to the planning commission. And like I said, there's kind of a notification process. I don't know if that exactly matches the people who got invites to this. It's usually people who live within a certain distance of the border. I think it's like 500 feet often.
We sent,
Yeah, please.
we expanded the reach for this meeting, so it would be, the city would probably send it to fewer than what we actually sent it to. But to follow up on Tim's comment on the steering committee, it's not some mysterious group of people. It's actually me and Allison and Tim and Dan and Steve and Marissa, and so we're you know, a lot of us are here, so we're hearing you. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would say I'll probably get, I hope I'm not sounding redundant. I mean, I'm grateful that the city is doing the right thing for our children, our community, and helping the elementary school. I mean, it's very obvious that Hugo is expanding. We need the education space for our children. But we lived in the neighborhood for, 20 years. And it's unfortunate enough that the school is going in our backyard. But the thought of having the traffic come along with that is insurmountable. I mean, to even fathom that we would be kind of hit with two loads, so to speak, losing this peaceful, serene backyard experience that we had for 20 years, and now increased foot traffic, mitigating the safety of our loved ones is really, it's difficult to hear that that's even a consideration. So I appreciate you guys giving us an opportunity to voice our opinions. I just hope that they're also taken into very strong consideration when making the decision, when we're kind of weighing the input of the community members against the cost. And I understand that the state still needs to weigh in and things like that, but it would be really, really unfortunate to have all the traffic go through the neighborhood.
Sure. Thank you. It was another statement about what people moved into the neighborhood with the premise of, and it's a quiet neighborhood, and to bring this traffic through would really change the character of the neighborhood. I'm gonna look at you, but I think it would be fair that we can publish the facility committee's decision on this thing sooner than when it goes to the city. Maybe we can point people to the website. We can talk about this meeting and the results of that. That will be hopefully in the next few weeks, because we really want to make a decision so that we can either go down the left or the right path. I also want to just absolutely say that we're here sincerely tonight. The district did not have a horse in the race on either one. We're not here to sell you one or the other. We truly wanted your input. Because I have been in a lot of these kinds of meetings, and some people really see having an elementary in their neighborhood as an asset, not as a burden. So we wanted to get the read of the neighborhood as best we could to influence that decision. So I can assure you we're here sincerely to ask for input, not to tell you it's going to be one way or the other at this point. Got
Yeah,
one
go
more?
ahead, please.
So I want
Okay.
to honor the questions that have come in. In some, of course, online, you don't know that it's a repeat, so I'll ask them.
Sure thing.
How will the entrance be decided? Will the community get to vote? And then a comment, thank you, thanks for all your hard work on this process. Next question, so is the traffic study being done during the COVID time? If so, it is not accurate. Usually in the mornings, there is a line of cars at 159th and 61 trying to get turned along with buses. It's ridiculous to think about adding a school entrance through this neighborhood. If it goes down Fox Hill, I can guarantee I will be moving. The amount of traffic just with Onika coming in is a lot on normal school days.
So again, it was more emphasis on the busyness of that neighborhood and the traffic on 159 already. And then there was a fascinating question. COVID happened in the middle of all this, so we've had to do a lot of pivoting for that. We are doing traffic studies. We delayed them for as long as we possibly could without holding up the project, but we need to move forward. So the district has hired a consultant, another consultant to do those studies. And we have found a workaround that is the city of White Bear for the project founder has accepted that. We still need to work through that with the city of Hugo, but basically what they can do is take traffic information that's been recorded. As you know, we're all under surveillance in various ways, and get access to that through the county and the state and the cities, and use that to do the traffic study. So we're going to be looking at traffic study from before, traffic patterns from before COVID to do the study, which I will say is not the usual way to do it. Usually they send people out with clickers and devices in the road to count cars, but we're trying to adapt and pivot so that we can keep the projects on schedule.
Okay, next one. What are the positives of building entrances on the north side?
So the question is, what are the positives of building entrances on the north side? I think we've kind of covered them, but I guess to recap, it would be a tighter connection into the neighborhood, which I think many of you see as a negative. It would allow us another access point because we're not going to be able to get two, so we would be able to separate the buses and parents and students on site a little bit more effectively than we can with one. And it would turn the entrance to the neighborhood to the school to the neighborhood, I think, in a little bit more friendly way. There's also the fact that when we put it on 61, the only way to get to the school really is through 61. So everybody that has to go there will have to get onto 61 at whatever point and then get off at 61. So those are really it. And again, we came here because it could go either way. So I'm not here to sell one or the other, but I would say those are the high points. I don't know if you can think of any.
Yep, there was some discussion about if people who live in that neighborhood to the north of their students go there, is it an inconvenience to have to go out to the highway, right? So there's they're trying to think from that perspective as well. Try on that hat.
Two more.
Go for it.
Are the facilities meetings open to the public as well?
So the question is if the facilities meetings are open to the public as well. So the steering committee meetings are not public meetings. I think we can commit to getting a decision public, although the planning commission meeting is a public meeting and the city council meeting is a public meeting. So that's when the notifications would come out. So there are public hearing elements to both of those.
And I would suggest the district is always open to input. So if there's something that you think of after tonight, I think you could reach out to Marissa or to Wayne or Tim and send that information in.
Okay, and one was added as well, so still two.
Go for it.
Two more. Do the citizens get to participate on the vote of the entrance of the school? And I think that's been covered. But then a last question that just was, or comment that was just submitted. Yes, we like the idea of having schools close to the neighborhood. Sorry. And another just came in. Okay. However, not the entrance, which would increase more traffic and also put our children in danger and risk of being hit through a residential neighborhood should not be an option. So thank you for that comment. And then just added while I was reading the other is there is only 3 ways into the development. Is there an option for both things to happen for an entrance and a roundabout?
I'm sorry, could you read the last part of that again?
Sure. There is only 3 ways into the development. Is there an option for both things to happen for an entrance and a roundabout?
Oh, so that was the question about can we go to 61 and connect up to the north? And again, we haven't been looking at that option. I guess if somebody really wanted that to happen, we could start looking at it, but it hasn't been a favored option to make that a throughway into the neighborhood. We generally wouldn't want to encourage traffic to be on the school site and congest the
Use
school
as a,
site
kind of as a cut through.
for safety reasons.
Yeah.
There's your opening. 361 on the rest of the-
Yep.
So we aren't considering that option right now.
We're caught up here.
All right. Is
Awesome.
there any last comments people would like to make here or questions?
Just make a comment, there's been a lot of negative, about the complete Foxville. I personally think this is an asset for our neighborhood. Traffic, like everybody said, on Foxville, there's pretty regularly, we just don't want to see that.
Thanks for your comments.
You should repeat that.
Yeah, so the comment was that, that does see the, school as an asset to the neighborhood, just not maybe the traffic that comes along with it and, the traffic that's already there on Fox Hill being a problem.
Okay, thank you. Paul and Sal, like Paul said, their entire career has been developing school sites and putting student safety at the highest priority in that development. So thank you to them. Thanks for everyone who joined us today, for everyone who joined us on the live feed, for all the feedback. We've got it recorded. This is good information for us, very helpful, and we heard a really clear message tonight. So thank you. Don't hesitate to contact myself, Dr. Kazmerchik, any of us, Dr. Gillespie, any of us in the district, be happy to respond to any questions or input you have. Okay, have a good night.
Thank you, everybody.